Hello, everybody. It's time for another, you guessed it, Convos with Kim. She just said she's not sure she's in camera, but she's hoping she went to another window or something. But anywho, yeah, I guess we will just I'll turn it over to her and I don't want to have a very long intro ever because I don't want to run out of time. Although I guess if we need to, we could always just go to another video and I can merge them. But anywho, with that, here she is.
Okay, so I was thought we were going to get nice thunderstorm sounds on here because it was storming a little bit and I had the nice smell of rain coming through my window and everything, but it's over now. So
I could always put them on my Alexa, but
yeah. So today I'm going to talk about something that makes me happy, and that is my church. And I'm going to talk about why I love my church.
oh boy.
So the church that I attend is called Unitarian Universalists. And I hope maybe someday they'll change their name because if you listen to that, that's like a 10-syllable name, Unitarian Universalists. And
Well, a
I just
lot of
kind
people
of,
just say you, but yeah, that doesn't really clarify too much.
no, I mean, that's what I've tried to do. And then everybody asks me, well, what's that? So then I say
Yeah.
Unitarian Universalist, and then they get even more confused. And yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of gone far afield from our name in a way too. So as far as I know, I'm the only person thinking this right now, but that's just something I'd kind of like to see is for us to have a more fitting, easy name. But I suppose it might be as hard to actually change in people's heads as like the Mormons that they've been trying to change their name for years. They don't want to be called Mormons anymore. They want to be called in their case, they want a longer name. I can't even think what it is at the moment. But yeah. But anyway, that's kind of beside the point.
Well, I know they go by LDS,
Yeah,
Latter-day Saints,
Latter-day
but
Saints, but it's even longer than that.
yeah,
But yeah.
really,
So,
who
but
knows what a church stands for anyway?
yeah,
That
exactly.
can change. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and even the history of the church, I've been just kind of thinking lately, like when we introduce ourselves to new members, they kind of have a little video you can watch and just a little talk on the history of our denomination, which is like interesting, especially to like history buffs like me. I love to hear all about our history. Um, and just like where we came from, but it's almost irrelevant today because we draw from so many traditions. Um, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Like where we came from originally was two separate denominations, Unitarians and Universalists. Unitarians are probably familiar to a lot of people because they, like Thomas Jefferson was a Unitarian. I think Thomas Paine, just a lot of like more free thinking people like that. Um, and they basically didn't believe in a lot, like they believed in a deity, I guess, but not necessarily a Christian deity. Um, they believed that like a God or a higher power existed, but like Thomas Jefferson, the only thing he wanted in the Bible, he actually kind of wrote his own Bible that contained nothing but the words of Jesus because he thought like they would be good words to live by and whatnot, but the rest of the Bible he thought was just mostly a bunch of silliness. Um, and then there were universalists who basically believed that that God is a loving God and there's no such thing as hell, and everybody is can go to heaven. Like God's plan of salvation is universal. So they obviously didn't really have any Christian beliefs either. So basically, from my understanding, like both churches, quote unquote churches, were just kind of inventing their religion and reforming their ideas as they went along. And like it's just kind of interesting to see what they stood for throughout history. Like fortunately, both of them were on the right side of the slavery issue and kind of joined up with the Quakers and whatnot to uh, try to get rid of slavery and to help out the slaves and like the ones that were trying to go underground. And but there were some things I think I can't really maybe eugenics, like the eugenics thing that was going on in the first part of the 20th century. Some of them might have been like on the wrong side of that. So like as with any large group of people that has a history, um, they're not always going to be on the right side of every issue, but it's okay, like in this case, rather than when, like I've always gotten frustrated with other churches that were on such evil um sides in throughout history. But the difference is that like we as UUs can admit that because we know that we are only human and that we're like being led by human entities. Whereas a lot of these other denominations, they claim that they were like created by God and that they speak for God Himself. And so that logically would mean that they would have to be right all the time on whatever stance they've taken, which obviously isn't the case. And anyway, the two denominations officially joined in 1961. They started like talking about this, I guess, in the 1940s because they both were in the same place. I think somewhere in Massachusetts, I think maybe Boston is where both the denomination heads were, and they kind of started realizing that they both believed in similar things, and they were like both shrinking at the time, like most churches are. And so they just thought it'd be better to join forces, which is another thing that I like about the history of it is a lot of churches just keep on splitting and splitting and splitting. You would never hear of one type of church joining with another type of church, but the UUs were willing to join up with each other because they figured they could accomplish more together than separately. And so yeah, they worked on this for about 20 years, and I think it was like 1961 that when the merger was finally complete. So it was all like very organized and very well done and everything. It wasn't just done on a whim. But even since then, like people and their thinking and beliefs has continued to evolve. That's why I was just kind of thinking about a lot of this today. Like, why do we still need the word universalist in our name? I mean, I'm sure to some people, there are some maybe like more traditional people in my church, and they probably are interested in that because that just affirms that like everybody is going to heaven. But my thinking is like, how many people now even believe in the concept of heaven, and like, is it important now to reaffirm that everybody's gonna go to heaven? I would say maybe half of the people, maybe not quite half, but a lot of the people in my church don't even necessarily believe like in an afterlife. So why does that have to be like a prevalent part of our name? But yet, kind of just examining all that
But how
makes
does the
it
universalist part mean afterlife?
It's just universalist means the whole universe is welcome into heaven, like that God
Oh, okay.
isn't particular. He welcomes everybody, no matter like where you're from or what country you're from, what planet you're from. They like believe in the whole that the whole universe is going to be saved. But nowadays, like I said, I don't think that whole belief in salvation by a God is even that important.
In
Like, because
that
I looked
church.
up to that church. Yeah, I got curious about all this, and I was like asking Chat GPT about the a lot of their beliefs and all that just today. And like I said, what is the UU belief on the afterlife? And it explained to me that there really isn't a view on the afterlife. That's the neat thing about the UU. They don't like push any official belief on anybody. What they're all about is exploration and people coming to their own conclusions about what they believe about their spirituality and whatnot. So, um, Yeah, I kind of got away from my notes here, so I'm trying to find my place.
But to me, the universal part, I mean, still kind of applies because it just means there's a universal acceptance of anyone. It wouldn't
Huh.
really have to apply to the afterlife, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I guess that would be one reason to keep it for people that want to keep that long 10-syllable name. But
Yeah,
like
I mean, I would think it,
Unitarian, what does that mean to people nowadays?
yeah, like why not get rid of that part?
Yeah, 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 get rid of that part. Um, and so it has been around for a couple of centuries. I think the Unitarians and Universalists like went back to the 1700s when they actually formed. And so like that's another thing that the UU stand for is just free thinking. And starting from way back then, both of those denominations were willing to like go against the prevalent thought of the day and the prevalent religions, and they just walked away from the things that didn't make sense to them. And that's kind of what UUs still do today. Um, so that's just kind of neat that it does go back that far. It's not like some newfangled thing that draws only the young, which a lot of these what are they called? Like the churches today that are just so hip and boy, I'm just
Yeah.
losing my words today. But mega
Emergent?
churches, well, yeah, the
Yeah.
emergent churches and mega churches, they just like start their, it seems like their purpose is to like cater to the young people. And that in a lot of ways doesn't work that well because they don't have like the stability that the older people can bring, and they kind of have to like keep reinventing the wheel. Um, Whereas we still rely on a lot of our traditions and whatnot in the UU church that have been going on for centuries. Um, and the older people in the UU still bring like some spirituality to the church, which I think a lot of people are looking for. They just might not call it the Christian God, but they do believe in just like unknowns that like no, we don't have all the answers of how everything came to be. And there just a lot of times seems to be other forces out there maybe that we're not aware of. Maybe it's just the powerful force of human connection. That's one kind of spiritual belief that they emphasize a lot, that what humans can accomplish when they're working together toward goals of loving each other. Um, but yet, like it says, because we are such free thinking people, we do have the flexibility to change with the times too. Like our congregation, my personal congregation that I belong to, I would say is different even than our little congregation here was like 10 years ago, because I've been like looking back on YouTube videos and what they had on the internet from way back when, and we had like a different minister back then that was probably a little more traditional in some ways and whatnot, but I can just kind of tell from picking up different things that our congregation has changed a lot as far as the more prevalent beliefs, just like in the last 10 years. So I'm sure that has happened on an even greater scale if you look at like the national or the worldwide um, denomination.
I think all churches are basically that way.
Yeah, that's true, but we're just more willing to admit it. And because we
Hmm.
can admit it, we can like change things more quickly from the top. Whereas other churches, it takes them years to get things through this committee and that committee and whatnot. I think we just have more flexibility as far as changing what needs to be changed.
So do they have like conventions or whatever, like the Southern Baptist Convention or whatever? Do they have something like that?
Yep. Yeah. A lot of the local
Mhm.
people in my church just got back from a statewide convention that happens every year. And then there's a national one. I think it happens every year or maybe every 2 years.
So like
Or
they
I think
do vote on stuff and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. They all, I mean, it's actually more democratic, I think, than a lot of denominations because like the head people know that they're not speaking for God. Like I said, they know it's just like human driven and humans cooperating together. And they know they have a lot of like independent minded, free thinking people in their church. So yeah, they kind of have their work cut out for them in getting all the not denominations, but all the local churches to work together to have some sort of national body. But I think they are very successful at that. And people from my church have gone to national conventions before to vote on different things so that every congregation can have a vote and a say in what's going on and the changes that are made. So I would think one of the main things that the UU stands for is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Like almost everything we do is based on that. And we just really are into justice and equity and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Like each person is free to do that on their own, the right of freedom of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. So it's not just led by like one person making the rules for everybody, and even the churches aren't led really by one minister. They're like everybody, the whole congregation is working together. And another one of our goals and principles is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. So every thing we do in our congregation is kind of working toward those larger goals. We also really emphasize the respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are all a part. So, of course, we believe in preserving our planet and taking care of things in nature. We have people that really believe in our flower garden out front, and they're always encouraging us to take care of that. Just last Sunday, we had a water Sunday where everybody brought water instead of communion. It was like a water communion where we talked about the importance of water and how to conserve it and all the important things that water does. So, like, everybody brought some water that has significance to them. Like maybe they were in a national park and collected some water or at a camping site or whatever. And then everybody like dumped their water together, which and then it all intermingled. So we thought about how all our lives are intermingled and intertwined, and water is really at the base of it all, et cetera, et cetera. So in our church, um, another tradition we have is like putting a stone in the water. Um, or the pianist, we have a really great pianist at our church who I really appreciate, and she just comes up with all these really nice songs that you don't typically hear in church, but they're just really good that you can contemplate to or whatever. So people kind of go up one by one. The ones that want to have a concern or something they're burdened by, they can go up and pick up a stone from the pile of stones that's there in front and put the stone into a basin of water. And there's probably more meaning to it than I really even am aware of. But that's just kind of a neat tradition that lets the whole congregation know that this person has some kind of worry or burden or whatever. And so they're like taking the stone and putting it in the water to be so that concern can be blessed or just surrounded by love.
And
Um,
a lot of this, I think I even captured when I visited your church that time when you gave a talk.
right. Yeah, people
So
can
yeah,
look
any
for that.
of you that are curious, I don't remember what I called it exactly, but it was like about a year ago, and yeah, they even gave a good like summary or overview. I don't know if it's something they say every week, but they just did a good job of explaining broadly what the church stands for and whatnot. And I think that some of the rituals, like the stone and everything, was on there too. So yeah, like I really liked my friend. I visited my friend Laura's church and gotten to see some of those rituals. So it's just really fun to look at some of that stuff.
Yep, yeah, and we do have that creed every week, I guess. We don't really call it a creed, I don't think, but like a lot of churches kind of repeat their creed together to know what they stand for. And we do the same thing in our church, which of course, I can't think of it now, but yeah, we do have a lot of those repetitious things that just remind us all of why we're there.
Like you
Uh,
stood in a circle, I remember, for part of it.
yep. Yeah, we do that at the end.
Hmm.
Uh, well, the service starts out with silence, which I really appreciate. Like when a bell rings to kind of bring everybody to attention, and then everybody just kind of gradually quiets down while our pianist Laurel plays another really neat song on the piano. It's different every week, but it's always something that like gets people's attention and or just not really even an attention getter, just something that encourages you to like reflect. So you start out the service by reflecting, and then there's just several times throughout the service to do that. Like as she plays again, just another soft song after the sermon, so that people can kind of think about the sermon and what they got out of it and whatnot. And another thing we do in our church is share joys and concerns, which is similar to other churches, but like it's not a prayer request. We're not like praying to another entity about it. We're sharing our lives with each other and letting in, like we're all aware that the purpose is to share joys and concerns with each other. The important thing is sharing with the other humans that are right there around you. And then we have all kinds of interesting sermons. We don't have a full-time minister right now, so we've just been reaching out to all kinds of people to give us a sermon, either in the congregation or in our town. And I think other even churches that have a minister, they still encourage sermons from other people because they don't just want to hear from the same person all the time. So we get like scientists or psychologists in to just give us wisdom from their field, or workers in our community, or historians. We've had a couple interesting sermons from history, or we get hobbyists in there to just tell us about their hobby and why they love it, or academics, um, or just people from other religious traditions. We've had a person in a couple times, a Jewish rabbi, to talk about his tradition and wisdom that we can all gain from the Torah and other Jewish tradition and literature. And we have a lot of respect for the Buddhist tradition and what we can learn about, like mindfulness and meditation. There's just plenty of social and philosophical and scientific issues that we can explore that go so far beyond like one book. That's still one of my regrets of just how much time I spent like contemplating and studying this one book, the Bible, when there are so many other things I could have been studying and learning about the real world. Um,
That's
I mean,
not
I just
written in archaic language or interpreted
Yeah.
into modern language that anybody could just, yeah.
Yeah, like Sunday after Sunday, I went to church and just heard these simple, repetitive messages all about, I mean, over and over again about how to be a good girl and to please this invisible being and whatnot. And that I just could have been learning so many more interesting things like I am now. So, um, just for an example, some recent Sunday services that we've had have been well, I told you about the water service, and then we had a service that was just a sing-along where a lady came up from another town actually with her, and she's a guitar player and kind of like a folk singer. Well, she does lots of different type of music, but she just had a lot of different congregational songs all about courage and comfort and justice. And then we had a sermon about the importance of art one Sunday, like how art has been used to convey messages of hope and turn our attention to the needs of others, and how supporting the arts is can really be like a radical act of hope Because art obviously is something that people turn to even in the middle of wars or in the middle of anything bad. People turn to paintings or books or movies or just any of thing in that artistic field, music, of course. They turn to that as an escape or just to give themselves hope for the future. So art is very important. We had a service on belonging. What does it really take to feel connected? And what does belonging require of us? And then we had a service from a local charity group here in town talking about what they provide for the community. And one of my favorite sermons that has been given in the past year or so was from a friend of mine who also attends the humanist group that I attend at my church. And his sermon was called Get the Hell Out.
Mm.
And it was just a really great sermon all about um, the whole concept of hell and how it's such a harmful concept, and it's really a concept that we should be like getting rid of, and because we as humans should not be using the fear of burning up forever as our motivation and our reason to do things. Instead, we should be using love for our fellow man as a the reason why we do things. In fact, I saved that whole sermon in that outline, so I might come back to that topic in a future Convos with Kim because I thought he just really presented that in a great way.
In a way, it just seems so obvious now, but I mean, back then it just wasn't just like slavery. Like people nowadays just say, how could they have done that? It just they can't even understand. But back then it was just common belief, and they just people just honestly didn't see anything wrong with it. It's just strange how stuff like that changes.
Yeah, hell, like back in time, people could only see like why else would people be good if there's no threat of something very bad happening to them? So the worst thing they could come up with, I guess, is like burning forever. But yeah, those concepts are just obviously so human now. It's kind of hard to see how some people in the year 2025 can still believe in them, but um actually my church is probably more Christian than not in some ways. I mean, a lot of my friends at the church had came from other churches, which of course were Christian. And so like that's where their roots are. Um, but there are plenty of humanists at my church, free thinkers, atheists. Um, but we all have plenty of tolerance for each other because we all have the same overall goals to love and serve and appreciate other humans. Um, like my friend Tanya, when she's introducing the church to newcomers, she'll often say one of her my favorite lines that she says is use your own translator. Like just come to church with your own translator because with all these different beliefs and whatnot, and with all the different types of speakers that we have, you might hear something from the pulpit once in a while, or I don't even know if it's, I think it's a podium, is more what it's called, but you might hear something from up front that you don't particularly agree with, but just like bring your own translator and make that like everybody that's speaking is coming from a place of good intentions. So just take what they say and make it meaningful to you. Just translate it in your own way. Like if they say something about God and you don't believe in God, then you can just reword that in your mind to mean like love or just the overall power of the universe or just whatever you want things to mean. You can kind of make it mean whatever you want, and there's nobody that can argue with you because that's the whole thing of the you is your own um, personal spiritual exploration. So um, so it's still like it has the more traditional religious roots. Like now there's all these other secular type churches springing up, like Sunday assemblies and others that I have looked into because I didn't really know where I was going to end up living and whatnot. And I wanted to make sure that I was in a place where I could, where I felt like I belonged, which is something that I hadn't had for a long time. And I knew I would want to be in a quote unquote church of some sort. So I was looking like at these Sunday assemblies. And from what I've seen, a lot of them start out all gung-ho and they're just really taking off, and people are like really enthusiastic about them, but they don't really seem to survive that well for a few different reasons. One, because they're like trying to invent the wheel and just kind of create their own thing from scratch. So there's like no traditions that have been passed down to them. They're just trying to create their own new ones. And the people that go to a place like that are usually going because they're sick of traditional church that they knew like growing up. So they don't want to commit to something else and have that same type of expectation. But I think younger people now are, I mean, we're hearing so much about like this epidemic of loneliness, and just that it's harder to find ways to connect with other people nowadays, like even in just any type of group, Lions groups, just the Elks, any kind of even bowling leagues, stuff like that, there used to be a lot more things like that. And now for some reason there's just kind of a vacuum, I think, because people did like start to pull away from church, and then they just got to thinking like, well, why do I need to belong to anything? But I think now we're realizing that there is a need for organizations for people to belong to. So, and so there is a need to be committed to something if we want it to work. Like political groups have a hard time staying together just because there's such a very few people who actually want to commit to anything. Um, my local church here has a very dedicated group of workers who keep things organized and going. Despite the fact that we're without a pastor right now, we're in the process of searching for a new minister. Um, but the church just continues to hum along because of these very dedicated and committed people. Um, you is for the importance, I mean, is for people who see the importance of church, as it were, like more traditional church, and the gap that has been left in our lives for so many people who have left traditional church. This is something that we can still join up with, that still has some of those traditions and commitments that keep it together. Um, like one of the things I've noticed that really helps my church to keep going is these ongoing committees that we have that take care of lots of different things. Like we have a committee looking for our pastor right now, of course, and then we have another committee um, that budgets and oversees the finances, and another committee specifically for hospitality, like making sure that visitors get an extra welcome, and to follow up with those people and see what we can do to serve them better. And they set up like newcomer breakfasts so that newcomers can come and get their questions answered, and yet meet with some of the people that have been there longer and stuff like that. And I was actually a part of that committee for a while, so I know how very busy they kept, and they just had a lot to do and a lot to keep organized. And they were always like just looking out for new people and how different ways they could be following up and stuff like that. So I know if that committee was that busy, all these other like I had no idea really what that committee did until I was on it. And I saw like how they just are meet regularly every month, and have an agenda and many different things every month that they need to get done. And so I'm sure that's how all of these other committees work too. Like there's a social activities committee that plans things like picnics and potlucks after church, or movie nights where we all get together and watch a film and then discuss it afterwards, or different community walks and whatnot that we participate in. There's another committee for social outreach, which is like needs in the community or world that we can help with. Then we have a caring committee for needs in the congregation, like people that might need rides or food during a time when maybe somebody's sick or maybe somebody's in the hospital and needs visits, just things like that. We have a communications committee to better engage members and friends and to present our church to the broader community, like by marching in parades or handing out literature, or we have a table set up on a college campus during their welcoming week so we can let college students know about us. And then, of course, we have a more traditional board that takes on the bigger issues and planning ahead goals for the entire year and making sure that we've met the goals that we've already set and making sure that we're in compliance with the larger national and worldwide denomination. So we're a very small congregation, maybe like 70 to 80 regular people. And of course, fewer of those that are actually like totally committed. And but everything still gets done smoothly because of all these committees that I've been in other churches that are that size, and but everything is taken care of either by the pastor and his wife or by a board, which just generally tries to like oversee this stuff and forms committees like kind of haphazardly, just temporary committees to take care of certain things as they come up. Um, but there's just really a need for these ongoing committees that keep meeting that can just keep taking care of these things behind the scenes. And of course, like they change, maybe two of the members will rotate out every year, and then they'll ask two other members if they would consider joining, or they have like newcomers write down things they might be interested in so that we have an idea of what committee might be good for them and whatnot. Um, so yeah, that's just really something neat that I've noticed that really helps things to run smoothly.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
bet there's probably not as much of a guilt trip either for people that don't want to like do a lot of work in the church.
No, I mean, there's just freedom with like I was only
Yeah.
on that committee for a few months and I realized that it wasn't really going to work out for me to be on there long term for like scheduling reasons, and I was going to be gone for a while and whatnot. So I mean, yes, and there's plenty of other things for me to do whenever I'm ready to do it. But right now, I'm honestly just kind of enjoying being a pew warmer because that's something that I really haven't gotten to be in church for a long time. I was always knew way more than I wanted to know and was more involved in a church than I wanted to be at some points. So this has just been kind of refreshing to just kind of watch everything from the sidelines. Um, So yeah, we just realized that this went a little bit over our time, so we're merging these two recordings together. But I guess I must be really excited about my church because I didn't realize we had gone that long. This is the longest one I've done, I think.
I guess it
So
revived your preaching mode or something.
yeah. Yeah, so I don't know what we'll end up doing. I don't think there's that much left. So anyway, what I was just saying is that we as UUs are open to religious people, people who are still questioning what they believe and might not be quite sure, non-religious people, and yeah, I thought I had four the different things here.
Unbelievers.
Um, yeah, people who are still religious, questioning, non-religious. But it's like some of these new atheist groups are more male dominated, and they can get kind of cerebral, like all logic and science, which I personally appreciate, but a lot of people don't, and that might be why they're not growing as fast, and just there've been talks about like some abuse or just some like chauvinism and whatnot among these atheist groups, and just women aren't as involved in them. Whereas my church and the UUs, we have very active women who are good at bringing in the spiritual aspect and the feeling. A lot of the UU ministers are female. And I think we as women maybe just bring in like more of a welcoming atmosphere, make more of a point to welcome visitors and whatnot. So, um, and we do so much to help our community, which is another thing I appreciate. Every second Sunday, the offering that is received is donated to some local need in the community. Like it might be the people who are taking care of like the Spanish or Mexican, the immigrants that are coming in here. Or we might have one group or one time we donated to our local food bank here. So yeah, there's always many local needs that we can help with. And then there's every fifth Sunday we donate to some national or worldwide problem that maybe we've heard about in the news or whatever. And there's another committee that does all the research for that to make sure we're donating to a good place that will actually disperse the funds correctly and whatnot. Like one time we donated to hurricane victims, and one time we donated to Palestinians who had been bombed out of house and home and whatnot. So yeah, it's just great to be a part of that. Another thing that our church does that I really love is our circle suppers. Um, our the leader of our social committee, she really puts a lot of effort into just getting these groups together. First, she asks for hosts who might be willing to host a circle supper, and then the next week she'll ask for who might be interested in joining one of these circle suppers, and then she gets us together by date, whoever's schedules match up. And but she also makes an effort to like put old timers with newcomers, because the purpose of these is to get to know each other. And then she'll like let each hostess know who all is in her groups. Then the hostess will send out an email saying, I'm providing this kind of main dish, and here's the kind of sides I'm looking for. And then everybody can let everybody else know what side they're bringing and stuff like that. And it all comes together and works out great. Both of them that I've attended so far, like people have just sat around the table for 2 or 3 hours, just sharing stories from our lives with each other. Or one time we got into a political discussion. Somebody told us about an interesting book they were reading. It's just a really nice time of fellowship where you can get to know people on a more intimate level, like easier than you can at a potluck or whatever. And then, of course, there's the more traditional men's group and women's group that meet every month. And then it's also just great, like I mentioned earlier, to be part of something larger. Like we're not just out here trying to figure things out and like figuring out week to week on our own what we're going to be doing. We get help from the larger denomination, obviously, who is helping us look for a pastor right now. But besides that, they send out periodicals of different topics, like sermon topics. And then they've basically given you the whole sermon if you want to use it, or they've just given you like different quotes that you might want to use, or things like that, so that a congregation can just somebody within the congregation can just use that for that Sunday. Um, or they obviously, like our hymnal comes from the denomination, where we might have hymns on freedom or love or compassion. Obviously, our hymnal doesn't contain all these hymns about redemption and a bloody cross and saving our souls and all that. We just said to talk more about fellowship with each other and the love and compassion that we need in this world. Um, and then we have chalice circles, I think they're called, which are like Bible study type groups, but of course they're not just studying the Bible. The congregation will send out a monthly theme that that can be discussed for that month. Or they provide like lists of children's books that can be used during our children's sermons or during our Sunday school time for the children that meets at the same time that the adults are meeting. I don't attend one of the smaller circle or chalice groups because I'm in our humanist group, which I really love. UUs in general are kind of known for being more rebellious and more independent minded. In fact, there's kind of a saying that people won't even sing what's in the hymnal until they've read through it first and made up their minds whether they agree with it. But everybody like has the freedom to do that. And the humanist group that I'm a part of is probably more that way than even the rest of the congregation. We're just kind of more outspoken of what we believe or what we don't believe. We've been known to air our political views during some meetings or just our views of what's going on in the world. Or sometimes we'll like just bring an article to that we would like everybody else's opinion on and to discuss with each other. We just kind of do like one week we'll just ask, well, does anybody have anything they would like us to discuss or do the next week? We actually meet like twice a month, every 2 weeks. For the last couple times, we've been discussing this book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is about more Native American traditions and
I
how
think my daughter is reading that book.
yeah, that's what I told them that I had already heard about that from my niece.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Now
that
I'm
was
really
kind of,
even more curious to read it.
yeah, it's just it kind of gives you a different appreciation of different cultures. And then we had a Native American professor here from the college who volunteered to like lead us on a museum tour of this Native American culture and whatnot. So yeah, it was just we do all kinds of neat things, and it's just a group that I feel like I fit into pretty well, kind of a safe space where we can talk about things that might not be so welcomed in other circles. So that's really something I really like. And in summary of why I love my church, I'm going to share something that was written by a UU minister that was actually shared at one of our recent Sunday services. And I thought it was just a really great saying. So I figured I would share it here because it really exemplifies what I've been trying to say. So it says, newcomers, old timers, seekers, skeptics, saints of habit, and rebels of the heart. Here we gather not because we think the same, but because we choose to journey together. Belonging is not something given, it is something we build with open hands and open hearts. It is made in the sharing of stories, the holding of silences, the courage to show up as we are. Here we practice a radical hospitality, not of perfection, but of presence. May we make this place a shelter for the soul, a workshop for justice, a sanctuary where love is not merely spoken, but lived deeply. Again, in trust, in hope, in the spirit of belonging. So yeah, that kind of encapsulated well. And then at the end, as Connie mentioned, we formed this circle, I guess it would be called, where everybody goes to the end of their pew and joins hands with their neighbor and forms a loose circle all around the room, holding hands. And then we sing this song, From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. And we sing that over a couple times, and then we say, Go in peace and justice. And that just kind of is a neat way to renew our commitment to each other. And I also appreciate something that they usually say at the beginning every week, it says, like, I don't remember it exactly, whoever you are, wherever you're from, whatever you believe, whoever you love, you are welcome here. And that's kind of in contrast to a lot of churches who specify what you must believe and even who you must love and who you cannot love in order to belong. So, yeah, I just really appreciate that being said every Sunday too. So that's all about why I love my church.
Yeah, cool. And hopefully a lot of people will listen to this, to, if nothing else, just to learn about other ways of thought. And I think we just need to do more of that instead of just always staying in our own little bubble and only like speculating instead of hearing it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, with that, be sure to give comments and feedback if you appreciated this video and please like and subscribe and all that to Gliding Through Blindness, and she will be back next month with another great topic. Okay, bye for now.
Bye.